Hey, I'm Randall Williams, and welcome to an introduction to open tuning on JamPlay.com. In this lesson, I want to tell you a little bit about me and sort of where I came from, and also how to get into open tuning and out of it, how to move around once you get there. And my philosophy for this stuff is teaching you how it works. I want to give you just enough theory so that you've got a backbone for understanding how this stuff all works, and how you can do it yourself, how you can reproduce it, and how you can take the skills that you've acquired and move into different tunings, make different chord shapes. I want to teach you how to make standard chords, not standard chords, basically how to just get around and how to know the place. Very long story short, I'm a performing songwriter. I live at whereisrandall.com, and I went through the classical track and then decided that was no fun. So I marked up sonatas and concertos for years before deciding that it was really a whole lot more fun to stand on a street corner and play guitar. And then I graduated from that to driving around and playing gigs and stuff at coffee houses and concert series and house concerts and et cetera, et cetera. So all that being said, coming into Introduction to Open Tuning, I want to teach you how to get in and out of open D in this lesson, how to deal with the root parts of a chord. If you're shaky on theory, you don't need to know it per se. We'll go over it all. But I've just done an Introduction to Open Tuning, or I'm sorry, an Introduction to Music Theory as well on the site. So maybe go have a look at that first. Just two little short lessons for now. And then, yeah, come back and join us or stick around. This is for total beginners who haven't ever done it before. And if you've done a lot of it before, maybe skip ahead or whatever works for you. I would ask, though, that you engage with the process. So at some point I may ask for you to scribble down some stuff on paper, push pause, and sort of think it through yourself. I think that'll help you. It'll help you get it. So thanks for joining us. Here's another couple of scenes in this lesson, and have fun with it. Open tuning is really super easy. The deal with the guitar is that the strings right now don't really sound like anything. They're a chord, but they're not a very consonant chord. E, A, D, G, B, and E. And the thing about that is none of those notes really pull anywhere. If you play that, it doesn't feel like you've landed any place. Whereas when you stick a chord on here, you go, ah, there we are, there's something consonant. And open tuning, essentially all it does is makes the guitar do that. So basically how that works is there are three notes in a chord, most chords anyway. There are three notes in a chord, let's say D major, for example. D has three notes in it, and if you look at it here on the piano, there's a D. D is also going to have F sharp, which is this key right there, and it's going to have A. So it's going to have D and F sharp and A. And so true to form, in my D right here on the fretboard, I've got a D, an F sharp, and an A. For example, this is the D string right here that's open, and that's our D note. We're not playing either of these two right now. This note right here, this string is a G, and on the second fret that gives us an A, and so that's a D and an A. And then over here we've got a B string, there's C sharp, and here's D, so there's another D, so we have two Ds. And then over here, sitting on the very top, we got an E string. Up here is F, and there is F sharp. So that gives us D, F sharp, and A. So essentially, by making this chord shape, this triangle shape right here, by making that shape, we're taking this sound and making it consonant by adding these notes to it, and we can do all sorts of different things. And all those are D, because we've pushed down these frets in a certain combination that gives us those three notes. Now the deal is, the astute among you are saying, wait a second, this is six notes right here. Sure, but it's the same thing as we saw before, doubling the D. Here's a D, there's a D, so we're hearing Ds both times. That's the long and the short of it. So check this out. In the D chord, we're not playing either of those two notes. This note is an A, which is actually part of the D chord, except the deal is that it's, well, for some reason most people don't do that. They start here and they play the top four, so that note is sitting on the bottom. That's the root of the chord. It's a D, and it's really important, and it's nice to have it on the bottom. And when you put a note that is not D on the bottom, it does something different to the chord. And in this case, when we're putting the A on the bottom, it sort of washes out a little bit. And you don't want to put the E on the bottom because the E's a big loud, deep note, and the D's not based on it. So what people do sometimes is they wrap their thumbs around and they play this note on the bottom, which is an F sharp, right there. F sharp's in the chord, that's pretty cool. So the D chord, if I can write on the whiteboard like this, D, F sharp, and A. You can almost even read it. Check that out. D, F sharp, and A. So I have 6 strings on the guitar. If I want to play all 6 strings, cool. I just need to make sure that they're all D sharp, D, F sharp, and A. I can add other stuff to it, but then it's not a D chord. Then it's a D something, you know, etc. We'll deal with more of that later. So D, F sharp, and A. Remember, there's our D. Here's our A. There's another D, and there's an F sharp. So here's the D chord. There's that F sharp on top. If I lift the F sharp up, I've got D something else. Or play this note, it's a D something else. There's a something else too. Here's a something else altogether. So that note is actually really important, and we will deal with that later. But for the time being, remember our A is also in the D chord, but the E is not. So if I wanted to get a really big D sound, what I might do is take this E note and tune it down to D. There's a D string, here's a D, here's an E. Take a little bit of time, make sure they sound good together. Now if I play D, before I was just doing this. Now I have teeth. Right? So now I've tuned this note down to D, so the whole guitar when I play D is big. I love my Larrivee guitar. It's got this really big butt, and then I've got Kaiser strings on it that have a 58 on the bottom that go whomp. So anywho, etc. Sorry. Anywho, so D, F sharp, and A. And what I just did is tune this note down. So if you start retuning so that the whole guitar sounds like D, then all of a sudden you're off to the races. So the question then becomes, what gets doubled? And why does it get doubled? Which of these notes do you think is most important? That's not hard. If it's a D chord, the D note is probably the most important. The harder question, though, is what's the second most important note? What do you think? I'm actually asking. So, and why? The second most important note is the third, which is F sharp. So this is 1, and that's 3, and that's 5. So that's root and third and fifth. The third is actually the second most important note, and that's because it determines what flavor the chord is. So here's D. This is the third sitting right up on top. There's only one of them in this chord. Here's a D, A, D, and then A, and then D. So all that is a big power chord. Remember power chords? Actually, those aren't power chords at all. Right? Power chords. So this is just a big power chord. And we say power chord, or you sometimes write D5 for power chord, which basically means it doesn't have a third, and it doesn't have a flavor, if that makes sense. Maybe flavor is the right word, maybe it's not. Here's a D major. So that little F sharp sitting way up there on the top, on the tiniest little string on the guitar, made all of these notes major. And if I take that down half a step to minor, it's minor. So that note is actually really, really, really important. So the second most important note is the third. So knowing this, and then the fifth. Knowing this, now that we're going to build an open tuning, how do we go about doing it? We need to get all 3 of those notes in the guitar, and we already know that we're dealing with E, A, D, G, B, and E. I'm sorry if this seems like I'm slow moving. I'm just trying to make sure we catch everybody. So patience if all this stuff seems like it's, or just skim ahead. It's the internet age. It's a 30-second DVD age, video age. So how do we turn these notes into those notes. And if you would like to poke through the supplemental content and get out a blank piece of paper and write it down, that would be fantastic to think this through ahead of time. You mostly want to go down. You don't want to go up with any of them. Going up, sometimes you can, but especially on an acoustic guitar, these carry a lot of tension, and you could break strings, you could injure the guitar, etc., etc. So most of the time you're going to go down. So you want to go down from all these notes to make sure you get those notes. So if you're up for it, go ahead and press pause now and write down how we're going to get there. And if you didn't press pause, that's cool too. We're back. The E needs to go down, and what does it go to? It's going to go down to a D like it already has. The A stays where it is. The D stays where it is. The G is going to go down to F sharp, just a little bit down. You can almost read my writing. The B goes down to A, and the E goes down to D. So you'll notice here that we have 1, 2, 3 roots. Some people call this dad fad tuning. I wouldn't, mostly because when you say dad fad, you're not really making a distinction for F sharp. And F natural there instead of F sharp, like a regular old F, that's a different chord entirely. So I like to think of this as open D tuning instead of open D minor or dad fad. Dad gad, however, is a different deal, and we will get back to that. But 1, 2, 3 roots. There's these 2 fifths right there, and then there is our friend the third. And the reason why I put that big arrow on it is because the third you actually want to pay real close attention to. We will get to that a little bit later. So now, this handy little D chord up here is no longer, because now when I want to make a D chord, it's going to be different. So just like we did before, here's our D chord. We've tuned down. Now when I go to play G, it's not going to work. I've got to refinger the G chord because this note has been tuned down a whole step. So a whole step is 2 frets, meaning that I want to play G. I need to go up 2 frets, 1, 2. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do that. So that's your G chord in drop D tuning. So introduction to open tuning, that's essentially it. Take 1 string and drop it. Heck, you can drop a top string if you want to. There's a D. Hey, cool. Now I'm playing these 2 notes, except the top string is a D and the low string's a D. Even bigger. Very fun. So I'm going to want to take these off as well too. So here we go. There's D, here's A, and here's D. That stuff doesn't change. That's the G that we want to bring down to F sharp. Where do we find F sharp? Normally when we tune, it's right here. So we're going to go down from G to F sharp. The new note that we want is right here. If you're not used to doing a lot of open tunings, what I recommend is listen to that note, get it in your head, and then just make the other note match. And then go check it. Make sure it works. Here's the B. And we want the B to come down to A. We've already got an A set up. Voila! Open D tuning. Now we just play a D chord. Or we don't play a D chord. We actually have to do that whole part over again. Because when you do this, my dad's great. Dad's great. He and I learned to play guitar at the same time, and I took the thing around with me for years, and he didn't. And so he'll pick up my guitar, and he'll be like, yeah, I got nothing. So what I want to teach you in this lesson is thinking through how this works, what gets doubled, and how to make chords now that we've got this really cool. Now that we got this really cool D thing going on, and I want to set you up with some basic slide stuff. So, come back.